evening. Grab a final drink. The fridge is open. Make yourself comfortable. That was the welcome bell. Fantastic. So first task of the evening starts immediately. That was the second bell. We're starting smooth, I have the feeling. Yeah, good evening. Welcome to, I think, the 6th edition of Innovare. This time with a special edition around PropTech, around the technologies that shape the real estate industry. And as always, I'm super happy to see you all here. The announcement last Innovare was until 2 o'clock in the evening. So let's see what's the new record for Innovare. The longest one was 4 o'clock at night. So there's a little bit on the task side here. So Innovare was born together with our friends from Investment, which are also in the room if you want to raise your hand. Thanks for making this possible. And this idea was born to create the innovators of an ecosystem to talk about certain industry domains. And today it's around PropTech or BankQ. And bring us together to have a closer discussion, not just from the big perspective, but also to mingle together, have meaningful conversations, and shape something together. Last time we had workshops. This time, as we are getting closer to our PropTech Innovation Award, we flew in 2 of our speakers from Israel, Tel Aviv, and one just around the corner from the beautiful city of Frankfurt, Issac, sitting here in the first row. So why are we doing this PropTech special? Because our PropTech Innovation Award is going into the 3rd round, and for us this is a great opportunity to introduce the topic again, go a little bit more into deep dive, and also make you aware of what is going to happen there in the near future. So for those of you who haven't heard about GTEC, we are an ecosystem builder. We are connecting corporate, startups, and academia to have a shared platform where we can share ideas, where we can start collaborating and bring thoughts together that are meaningful to create a sustainable and desirable future through entrepreneurship and technology. And one of those meetups, Innovare, is part of that, where we mix together startups, academia, I've seen academia as well, and our corporate partners to have this conversation. So I don't want to stop too much from the meaningful discussions around PropTech, but before we start, I'm happy that our co-MD, Benjamin, is also here, flying in from Berlin, actually, who is also part of the PropTech jury in the award, and he will introduce a little bit of what we're going to do with the Innovation Award. Benjamin, the stage is yours.
Thank you. There's probably not so much to say because you already highlight the most critical things. So we're doing the PropTech Innovation Award for the 3rd time together with guys from Investment. It will happen the 16th of May in Berlin. Startups can still apply. We have a total prize of 40,000 euros that we will give away in that ceremony in Berlin. And application happens through our website. When you look at the past PropTech Innovation Awards that we had, a lot of interesting companies were there who have been proven to be very successful. Also afterwards, with some Investment started to collaborate. A lot of people found investors through the event, so I think it's absolutely worth going if you start up to participate in the award, or just come and see what are the latest technologies and innovations in the PropTech field. Make sure in the afternoon, before. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
That's always evening in Berlin.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. So I think I will be around later if you want to know a little bit more about what happened the last 2 years
question is, why PropTech? So just coming back from the World Economic Forum in Davos last week, you probably have seen it in the media. One topic that was present all the time is the role of cities, sustainability, and also on how we are going to live in the future. There were even whole pavilions built around mega cities of the future, which we are especially seeing happening in India right now. So we see completely new cities born out of nothing. And this is a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who is exactly covering this topic, cities of tomorrow, dynamic needs in a static environment. So I'm super excited to see that, and happy to introduce Oded Caspi from Israel. Thank you for being with us, and I will start your presentation if you don't mind. If I can figure out how it works. So a round of applause for Oded, please. This one. No. Another one. This one? There we go.
Okay, hi, good evening everyone, and thanks for the intro. So a few words about myself before diving into the presentation. My background is in a totally different space in software. Originally in entrepreneurship mostly, and then right now as an investor mostly. I run Cyrus, which is a seed VC fund, and I started becoming interested in PropTech and construction tech a few years ago, and the contrast between software and anything having to do with buildings and properties struck me as very interesting, because in software what you do is you create new things out of nothing. You do it in a very gradual and agile manner. So taking an idea and implementing it in software is something that could be done in days. And then you experiment, you check it, you test it, you see what's working, what's not working. And obviously in construction it's very different. Also from an investor's perspective, it's investors, to be honest, are superficial. We don't really know deeply what is going to work, what is not going to work. So what we do is we try to look at comparables. And the thing is, in this whole area of PropTech, construction tech, there have not been too many exits, and these are the comparables we look at. So it's very difficult to look at a company and to tell how it's going to exit, what profits, what VC profits it's going to generate. And as a result, we've seen very few startups, very few investments in this space, especially given the industry's magnitude, one of the biggest sectors in the world economy. And I was actually part of an initiative trying to change that in Israel, an initiative called PropTech, which is an innovation hub similar to what we're seeing here, bringing together the players, both industry, startups of course, and investors, and other people interested in the space. So I think maybe we'll start with a brief video of what PropTech is, and then go into the presentation. So how do I make it work? Just click here? Okay, let's see if it works.
Once again.
Okay, let's audio.
There is someone, somewhere, who invents a new idea. It can be anyone you see, him, or maybe her, or maybe you. An idea that transforms everything you have known into something faster, simpler, better. But a good idea is not enough. You need someone who will take it one step forward. And this is what Contact does. Taking good ideas in the construction industry to the next level. Contact's partners, Israel Builders Association, Ministry of Construction and Housing, Ministry of Economy and Industry. They have mended different communities of startups, construction companies, developers, regulatory bodies, and investors into one ecosystem with infinite abilities. We break the old rules and build new ones. Contact maximize the connections between the startups to the industry around the world, helped in achieving investments in the early stages of the startup, and creating joint ventures with the government offices. What else? Meetups, roundtables, showcasing, conventions, and joint activities with the Academy. Want a sneak peek to our startups? Drone, autonomous marking solutions on enterprise drones that improve construction productivity. Construe, the power of AI in construction. Createra, eco-innovative technologies in construction materials. Pulsar, the leading app for construction site management and project documentation. Construction Aid, achieve ultimate precision for any mission in construction. MyVinci provides a personalized and digital interior design. So you can keep standing still, or you can choose to make a leap and join us in becoming a part of the construction technology center of the world.
Moving on, following on the comment of cities growing, we see this huge exponential growth in cities, meaning that problems are becoming bigger, and cities are also changing. Our needs are changing, and our needs are changing in multiple aspects. First of all, if you look at the families of today who are living in houses, living in cities, they're very different from the families of previous years. Employment patterns. Obviously, eating habits, shopping habits, they're all different, and this change is becoming faster and faster. But the cities we live in, the cities we work in, are the same. They're unchanged for many years, both in terms of the structures we use, and also in terms of technologies and how they're built, maintained, and managed. Now, this is not only an issue of changing tastes, changing needs over the years. It's also a change in daytime versus nighttime. Obviously, this is showing the density of people in Lower Manhattan in different hours, and as you can see, it's very different, obviously, in the daytime and the nighttime. And this is obviously very different from the world I come from. If we look at software again as the other extreme, so software changes constantly. If you look at the applications you're using, look at Gmail, for instance. Gmail is changing every few minutes. We're not necessarily noticing all of these changes, but the system itself is different, and every few weeks or months we see different features, different capabilities. Obviously, this is the other extreme, but also if we look at products. So consumer electronics, again, this space where we've seen change every maybe once or twice a decade, we're seeing huge change every year or 2 years. And even in larger systems, so cars, where we've seen new products, new designs every 6 years. Now we're seeing this shortened into 3 years. And we're also seeing new ways of transportation that also impact, we'll talk about it, impact the uses in the cities. So this is kind of the ecosystem, the world we live in. But again, taking perspective from Tel Aviv, this used to be the tallest building in Tel Aviv, built around 50 years ago, also housing the Comtech office. And what we're seeing obviously the building, but also the urban area. It's pretty much the same. It's unchanged. Obviously serving very different needs, and it's probably going to look the same in 10 years or so. And when we look at this no-win situation, it means that we have properties that are not good enough for current uses. Some of them abandoned for years, sometimes for decades. On the other hand, we see a huge shortage. And I think, and by the way, I'm going to talk about the problems. I don't know much about the technology, but the we can do better. The technology is kind of the key to unlocking this potential. And we try to think about the types of solutions that could be implemented. Obviously, some of these are very long term, trying to streamline planning, trying to streamline permitting, which is something that's very long term, something that will affect cities for a decade. But also, we're starting to see short-term solutions that might be good for a lot of needs, because again, needs are changing. It's very difficult to assess today what needs the buildings that are built now will serve in 1 to 3 decades. In terms of thinking, again, just like in software and other products, we think that forever is not necessarily for everything. So obviously, when we're talking about zoning of a city, this is something that's going to be maintained for a long time. We're talking about new large buildings, also new infrastructure. Obviously, long-term thinking is important, but we are seeing examples where short-term thinking is the key. And obviously, maybe the most evident solution that has its problems, kind of a version 1, is startups like Airbnb, which have made huge impact, trying to rethink the use of existing properties, and obviously bringing in problems, bringing in a lot of negative feedback. But we've seen similar negative feedback with other technologies. I mean, when cars came into cities, a lot of protests met them, and obviously it took time for regulation and for people to accept this new innovation. So, those of us who fear that Airbnb and its peers are taking cities in the wrong direction might need to look at it as a version 1, a solution that's not perfect and has to be obviously enhanced, and obviously regulation needs to come in and also address its problems. And Zach is now going to talk about some new and innovative solutions, some of them coming from our startups in our ecosystem, and some of them coming from the more general startup ecosystem we're seeing. So I'll hand it over to you now.
Thanks, Oded. Good evening. Thanks again, and good evening. Thanks for coming over. I'm Zachi Flatto. I'm managing contact. Originally a civil engineer, but that was long time ago. Kind of remember that. Used to deal with different types of technology. I had my own startup in the automotive industry. So let's drill down a bit into first of all the opportunities that we see, and then to the solutions. So obviously all of you are familiar with WeWork, the neighbors from here. So that was a second revolution, still a big revolution. We describe it as a multi-use, but it's a semi-multi-use. You can see a kind of variations on that, like Mood startup, which transfer a bar, a regular bar, which acts all night as a bar, into a working office, co-working space during the day. And that startups that dealing with meetings, with rooms for meetings and events, specializing in that domain. So different variations on the same idea of WeWork. So again, you're all familiar with these spaces. I said before, it's a multi-use, yeah, and that's why, because it's just working on days. Most of them are just working on days, and the thing is that the prices are getting higher and higher everywhere, and probably most of you are familiar with that, yeah. And it doesn't matter where it's in New York, or the same is happening for residential. So again, prices are getting higher, demand is very high, everybody wants to live inside the city, supply is low, and the prices are getting higher and higher again. I like this scheme that's coming from Rem Koolhaas. It describes the spread of the usages over daytime, over 24 hours, okay, in a kind of interesting way. But if we look on how we're dividing our day of 24 hours between working and living, that's the kind of the divide that we see. Now, as I said before, everyone wants to work on city center and live on city center. Nobody wants to spend their life on commuting. That's not fun. That's a myth. I don't know how long you're spending on commuting, but that's not fun. And this is a great idea. It came during a hackathon which we made with Technion in Haifa. Technion is a kind of Israeli MIT, if I might say. We made it a hackathon together with them, teams of architects, civil engineers, and that's a team called Comix, which developed a technology which transfer space from being a living space into an office space. So you can see that example of a sofa. Again, the idea is a technology that has an adjusting furniture. Okay, so this sofa can turn into a bed, just folding up into the wall. That table opens from the wall and turns into a working station. This kitchen does the same, just pull it out. Moving libraries, gym area. The idea is a real multi-use, but using technology for that. In that case, furniture technology. Interesting use case, interesting team. Now let's have a look on another point of view on a short-term usage that is coming from a real estate betterment fund called Reality. So you're all familiar with this planning, or Dan mentioned that before. The planning, the permitting processing takes a long time. In Israel, it takes between 5 to 7 years, which is a lot. What these guys are doing, they're buying the asset and using for the benefit of the community in different types of projects. And later on, and by that, they're making the betterment of that asset, and later on, reselling. It's interesting because it's a kind of a win-win for these triangle partners, the fund, the community, and the municipality. And by that, they're getting the opposition to the projects lower because they're taking they're cooperating with the community and with the municipality. So, for instance, this is a project in Tel Aviv in the city center called Lincoln 16. It used to be a Bezek, a telco, a phone exchange. They transfer it into a cultural center, social center for different types of cultural events, together with different NGOs, the municipality, social initiatives, as well as commercial companies such as supermarket chains or even a restaurant. Okay, so different types of stakeholders with a mutual target to make that asset better. It's important to say that it's all for profit. Okay, it's a profitable real estate fund, and each project has to be sustainable. It's not a philanthropic initiative. So and they keep on doing that. So for instance, this is how the asset looks today. You can see the supermarket and the different areas. It's not a small one. So they invested quite a lot over there. And this is how it's going to look like in the future after they will rebuild it. And here is a couple of examples for the different events that they are doing, them cultural, social events, art events. Now let's see another two examples of the range, again from Bezek, from the telco company, turned into a training center for life-save organization called Irgun Hatzala, as well as a sports center, again a cooperation between an NGO. Okay, that's that's an Israeli startup. This is a kind of a social application or social application services with a different point of view. So they're looking on the full neighborhood, okay, and and they analyze the neighborhood rather than the asset or a specific asset itself. And they go and analyze the neighborhood and understand the needs of that community, that specific community, and supplying services according to the needs of the community. So starting from housing, local services, so they have a network of groceries and bars and restaurants, as well as shared spaces and special events. So for instance, where they're operating in Tel Aviv, in one of the neighborhoods, they're organizing a line of concerts, of open concerts, of live shows in the streets. Currently operating in Tel Aviv, in Berlin, I guess that's the reason Laura is familiar with them, as well as in Brooklyn. Interesting company. Anyone familiar with this picture? So if next time you're visiting Manhattan, that's quite a popular one. So you see a lot of shops for rent. I don't know the exact statistics, but I think this picture is a big opportunity for doing something. I'm not sure what. I mean, all these shops maybe can be turned into residential houses to apartments. I don't know, just a thought. But this is becoming really popular during the last 3-4 years, and something has to be done with that. You know, these shops are just empty all over. Now, another example of an opportunity, Oded mentioned before the smart mobility revolution. Just imagine yourself that this revolution is going to happen, and it will happen in some stage, and we will use autonomous cars and scooters. What will we do with these parking lots? Can you imagine the number of empty parking lots that we will have? Again, just a thought. Probably a good opportunity for doing something. Now, let's speak a bit about data. So a lot of data is created in the city, and it's keep on increasing. That's a prediction for a city, for a future city in 2025, for about 1 million people population. A huge amount of data will be created. Just imagine the opportunities in here. So what can you do with that data? Somehow, some of it will be open, not all of it, but some of it will be open, and you'll be able to buy that data. But I'm not going to speak about how you stream that data or how you're going to protect the data. I want to show you an example of technology that creates or collects the data and has some nice applications for that. So that's a company called Valorant. Let's see a short video about them.
The smart transportation revolution is going to transform our lives. But to make it happen, one piece is missing from the puzzle: data. Valorant has a holistic solution: the Smart Road System. By integrating innovative wireless sensing technologies into roads, we are transforming them into a data-generating infrastructure. This provides a stable, comprehensive, and reliable source of real-time information. These sensors include a lighting system. They're solar-powered, use wireless communication, and contain a multi-sensory mechanism for data fusion. Together, this network of sensors provides an enormous amount of actionable data: high-resolution traffic flow, various environmental conditions, and precise object or incident detection. This information is then transferred through a multi-layered communication system to the Valorant cloud. Here, machine learning algorithms index, track, and predict everything that takes place on the road. Comprehensive data in high resolution and in real time. Think of the value for traffic management, mobility applications, or smart vehicles. Our Cloud Control Center allows you to identify and prioritize the most urgent events. a whole new approach to managing any road situation. With an eye to the future, the system is already designed to meet the needs of autonomous vehicles, providing a safety net in areas where they're needed most. Exact in-lane location in harsh weather conditions, connecting them to non-connected vehicles and providing them with information regarding out-of-sight risks, giving them a much higher point of view. We provide answers for today's challenges while making sure that roads are ready for the future of smart transportation. Together, we're making
with pure construction tech, the hardcore, dealing with recycling of building materials. That's a company called Criteria. We've worked with that company in our incubation program during the last batch. I want to show you a film about them. I will jump a bit ahead.
Mimic that. Criteria products are fabricated in ways that mimic natural processes and leverage the inherent qualities of natural minerals. Our products are fabricated to participate within a circular economy and to capture the economic value of natural resources forever. I'm Adita Le'ena. I'm a sustainability designer, an impact-driven entrepreneur, and a senior lecturer at HIT. Reinvent it, taking it forward. After years of R&D and hard work, we at Criteria created our patented technology based on the vision of sustainability without compromising quality. This is a highly scalable, cost-effective technology. Our materials and products are made from 100% non-soluble minerals and vegetal fibers. They are completely different from the products that have been the standard ones to date. These products will be as strong as concrete, 6 times more thermal, and will create only 5% of its environmental impact. Their leading mechanical property, high-quality finish, and versatile design make them perfect for creative concepts and functional needs. We save 90% of the energy compared to traditional technologies. This enables mass production of a wide range of end products, such as building bricks, wall tiles, and light modular structures. This is already a reality. The Criteria wall tiles are out there in the market. The technology for our next products is ready for implementation. Many global players have shown high interest in collaborating with us and in implementing our materials in their products. Join forces with us and with all our partners in turning Criteria into a leading brand worldwide, transforming construction into a living, circular, positive industrial reality. Thank you.
Okay, I believe that this last part about materials and circular economy is a significant part of the future of cities, because if we will keep on building in the same way that we're built currently, we won't be able to make it. I mean, you'll often, obviously that's the situation, and that's still in the beginning, unfortunately. So you don't see a lot of startups doing that stuff, that interesting stuff. But it will come. It will take a bit, but and it's happening in Israel. It's really happening in Israel. So I want to thank you for joining us again. If you're a startup, corporate, investors, I believe we can cooperate with you and we can give you some value. So contact us. We'll be here afterwards. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Keep your questions. We will have a short panel after our next speaker where we are all back together on the stage to discuss this. Isaac, I'm not sure what I need to say now to introduce you, because basically everything was said. So we need new ways of building structures, building cities, and that's exactly what you are going to cover right out of the city of Frankfurt. Happy to have you here again, around how we are going to build cities in the future with green towers. Issac Thomas, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you guys. First and foremost, thank you Robin for the kind introduction, and also thank you to Investment and GTEC as well for creating this environment where we can come and learn a bit more about how cities will change in the future. My name is Isaac. I work with Green Towers, and we are here to shape cities in a better way. And our friends from Israel have obviously told you guys as to how cities are moving on and how technology is changing, what more is going on. We will also have a look at it a bit on the sustainable side and also in regards to what is coming. I would say obviously the GTEC guys are here. They know more about technology than me, I can tell you for sure. Like we have, what are the 3 basic needs of man? Food, clothing, shelter. Now GTEC guys, has the internet taken that space somewhere now?
Working on it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the 4th need, which is the internet, and then pretty much nobody today can live without internet. It looks like that. And people are actually taking holidays to take a break from internet these days. So cities at the same time than what we had back in the day have changed furthermore. They are no longer the same. And also our lifestyle has also changed a bit more. If you compare the lifestyle to your parents and then what you do, it's really different. So this is why, before we get deep into learning what's coming, we also have to learn the changes from the past that happened to where we are today too. So, of course, this is the city of Frankfurt. So yeah, I'd like to show you the city of tomorrow. That is Frankfurt. And of course, good thing about Frankfurt is they love their towers. And they love their tall buildings and towers. And you must be surprised, this is the only city in Germany where you can go high up to 200 meters. There's no other city, and if you compare majority of the cities in Europe, especially political Europe, it's only London and Frankfurt, which is really the high-rise capitals. Otherwise, if you want to see tall buildings, you might have to go to Moscow or St. Petersburg. But there is a small debate on that if they're really part of Europe or not type of thing. I'll stay away from that topic for now. So let's look at why our city is going high. Why are these guys building these towers? I mean, they must be not crazy. They must be doing it for a reason. So we've got this problem called urbanization that even the guys from Israel covered as well, as to people are all moving into cities. But when you go back a bit more and think about why this urbanization trend? If you go back really to the Stone Age, human beings are social animals. And we were hunters and gatherers, and we started staying in groups to provide for each other, to make sure we had a society to live. And then those groups evolved into cities, civilizations, and now what we see is a modern city where everybody comes together to do business, to live together, and to enjoy your life really. And then we look at a trend. So you're looking at North America, and worldwide they're saying by 2020 you're looking at 6 billion people moving into cities. That is a huge number. And then of course we have the city administration guys. Some of these guys are here as well. And they work 9 to 5 and they go home and all they know is, oh my God, 300 new people are coming into Frankfurt this week. Every week 300 new people are coming in. And then without knowing, there's a pressure on housing, there's a pressure on transportation. Suddenly you see, why are these tubes so crowded today? And then, oh no, it's this rush hour. And then surprisingly the next year you see, it's just getting more crowded. And then there's pressure on the cities to deliver transportation solutions, to deliver housing, to deliver sanitation problems. So all these pop up. And then if you look at countries like the emerging markets, like China, India, Africa, luckily I've had the fortune of working in some of these countries. And there, they really have those problems, where you would see where we're fortunate enough not to have those problems. Like some of you might have seen pictures of a daily train ride in Mumbai. Like people hanging on trains to get to go to work. And then these are some of the problems that's happening. So these are the problems of urbanization. And because of urbanization, cities are forced to go high. Now, if you have the economy or if you have the wealth, you could go high. Like say, for example, Dubai. They went high a few years ago because obviously their economy was reliant on oil. And they were like, you know what, we have the money, we could build as many towers as possible so we can squeeze people in and we could also go vertically high. The good thing in going high is, of course, you don't need the infrastructure. You wouldn't burn that much of carbon when you spread out. And slowly we look at options where cities started going high, and then there were after the Second World War, everybody was building, and nobody knew what's coming up until now. Recently, we started facing climate change. We started saying, "Oh my God, what we're doing is really bad. There is a problem with what's coming up." So we'll cover a bit of those points. So cities forced to go high. This is Frankfurt. You'll see these towers are just behind you. And they will be there in the next 4 years. I think they're already demolishing, aren't they? Yes. And they're building this. So it's called the 4 Tower. It's supposed to add to the skyline of Frankfurt. It's absolutely a spectacular project. And they're pushing this for sustainability as well. So the Dutch architects made this. So this will be the skyline of Frankfurt coming up very soon. So the Americans were the first one to invent skyscrapers, really. This was late 1800s where they invented the elevator, and because of the elevators when they started pushing for skyscrapers. So my background is the banking industry. I specialized in real estate, but recently specialized in tall buildings. So all I do every day is tall buildings, what's going on? So cities are forced to go high, and then you would see vertically going high, you can accommodate a lot of people, and then you will create a workflow, but do you make it sustainable is the big question. So, how many of you have been to Canary Wharf in London? A lot of people have. Now, Frankfurt is changing for the better. So in real estate, when you build tall buildings, they're usually quite expensive to build, because after a certain height, the build cost goes up. So instead of building residential towers, they mostly push for commercial towers, because you can sell more on the square meter. So when Canary Wharf came in, they came up, "Oh, we'll build this big thing, we'll have all the banks coming here, we'll build a great thing." And what happened was, after 6 p.m. in the evening or on the weekend, that's like a graveyard. You would see more people in a graveyard than in Canary Wharf. And surprisingly, it became a Monday to Thursday city. And Frankfurt, I believe 5 years ago, was almost the same, because everybody started coming into the city and people started living outside the city. Now the future of going high is also, this is where China and India, they started, because they had the population problem, and they started building towers to put people in. But they weren't really going after iconic architecture or things like that, they were just building blocks. So here now you would see more and more cities building tall to actually build apartments. And then the Americans obviously started building, they came up with they're always good at marketing, so they came up with they came up with a name called penthouse. And everyone goes, "Oh, penthouse, what's a penthouse?" Oh, you live on top of a tower and you look at the sky, that's a penthouse. And people started paying millions and millions and millions for it. So the industry started changing there, and then here slowly everybody's doing it now. And in Frankfurt recently, we've got this residential tower push that came in. So we've got the Grand Tower that's been built now at the minute. That is the first residential high-rise in Frankfurt. We're talking about a high-rise which is more than 150 meters tall. So now there's a push for it. So every developer is like, "Okay, let's build more residential towers. Let's build more residential towers." And as lovely as the real estate industry is, it's also a very ancient industry. Like the Freemasons, all these guys are involved. So they're like been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So that's how traditional it is. So luckily these guys spoke about contact. So a lot of guys don't talk about contact. Contact is construction technology. So in traditional real estate, first usually they do the land deal before even it comes to the tech guys to do what they're supposed to be doing. So now, thankfully, because of internet and because of technology changing, they're all integrating all these processes. And real estate will slowly become different now. We've seen loads of startups who are trying to change that, and we're also one of these guys as well. And then slowly you would see because half of the world's wealth is invested in real estate, you would see from ancient times, and that's where it's been going on. Because after bonds, which is the next secure asset, it's real estate. It's it's even the most oldest asset. So we'll slowly go into now the next one. When you go high, what really happens in the wrong way? So what you see is actually New York City, and they're not the greatest city in the world because this is the smog that you see. And this is what you see in loads of cities in China and India, because you just keep going high, build, not realizing what are you building. And then people realize that, oh my God, life is so fast-paced. Why am I so stressed? Because you're housing a lot of people in a small amount of square meters, and then there's a lot of pressure on clean air, on supply of water and resources like that. So this is where cities really face these problems. So what is the solution? like, there must be a solution, because after all, the human race is not that dumb. So the solution is, like recently in the last 5 years they've been doing this now, is to go high, is to go green. So very soon you'll see a lot more cities coming up like this, which is more greener, and they're pushing for green belt. So even Frankfurt is supposed to be called as a green city. So as soon as you step outside, you'll see a lot of green areas in Frankfurt. And major town planners, they're pushing for parks, gardens. Now, green on the ground is great, but what about? Because cities are going high. So they started pressurizing developers, like, can't you go high vertically in a green way? So vertically going high is also, in a green way, is also expensive because you need water. How do these plants survive? And what about wind tests, things like that. So now they've come up with solutions where you can go high in a green way. So we're looking at options like to fix. So if a lot of you guys were in Frankfurt during the last summer, we had like 39 degrees here. So this is something called the heat island effect. If you're in a city, especially during summertime, the heat levels are really high. And the reason being because of all the people and all the carbon that we let out. And this is why the heat, so if you go outside of Frankfurt, it'll be 5 degrees less than what you face here. This is cause of urbanization. So one way to beat heat island effect is to have more green, because plants release water in the air, and that actually cools down the city heat island effect. And this has been proven really. So a lot of tall buildings are going to take up green solutions, but then green comes with a price. And as usual, every business is there to make money. Why should we do something green if we're not really making much? I mean, we're not doing, real estate guys are like, we're not philanthropists, we're not getting paid for free. This business involves heavy amount of risk. The risk is really high, and then they would say, we don't want to go do green. So going green in a sustainable way is where we're looking in the future. Now we'll look at a solution for the green part we've seen. Now we want to look at smart cities. Everybody's been talking about smart cities, smart cities, smart city. Now, what is really a smart city? So I'll give you an example. So there are, because I work in London and Frankfurt at the same time, so I know who's the next thing, what's the next big thing coming in. Whenever something new comes up, there's like a big race, and there's a bunch of companies join the race, and eventually one guy wins, and then becomes the Facebook or the Google, and then goes, whoop, I did it. So now on the infrastructure side, there's also like everybody's building these smart homes, smart ovens, smart refrigerator, everything is smart. But with these smart appliances, do they have enough horsepower to actually support this? Like imagine using an iPhone X 5 years ago with a 2G network. Would that work? No. So we're looking at major infrastructure changes. Now, one way is there's two companies in London that's trying to change a whole building into a Wi-Fi zone. And the whole building will emit 1 gigabyte per second guaranteed speed, no matter what happens. So you can use your home Wi-Fi on the ground floor lounge, you can use your home Wi-Fi whenever you're around the building, and also they will sell the Wi-Fi to people passing by. So they can also log onto the app and so pay hourly and go, so there'll be a free Wi-Fi and things like that. And eventually their plan is to do building by building, cover up a whole street. The future is you might be able to use your Wi-Fi in the train when you're traveling from one end of the city to the other end at 1 gigabyte per second. So this is why cities, which we spoke about roads being smart, we spoke about cars, autonomous cars being smart. So this is where the movement is. And not only would, it's also, smart technology also helps in regards to saving energy. So these things will come hand in handy. So now, on the smart side is great. Now we're also looking at sustainable cities. So this is Frankfurt. And this is what we had offered for Frankfurt as a twin green tower. So this is sustainable means it's more green. The energy that cities try to generate renewable energy as much as possible. And also sustainable in terms of lifestyle. We see lifestyles changing. It's becoming really fast-paced. And we see more and more single people in their 30s and 40s. It's not the same world anymore. And like we spoke about, living costs have gone up. The rents are too high, so people are trying to live in shared accommodations. We see office costs being really high, so people are going into co-working spaces. So how do we mix all that up? So the plan is co-living spaces have already come up. Everybody's going for it. So it's kind of like in Germany. In Germany, they had Wohnungsgemeinschaft, which was like the basic way. Now they've made it a bit more luxury. You get to live in your own apartment, but you also have a community in the block. So you have daily events, you have a theater, you have a gym. So everything that you need for your fast-paced lifestyle is there in the building. So if you calculate, what do you need? You need a grocery shop, you need somewhere, you need a salon, and you would need your laundry services, and you would need a gym. If all that is in one building, imagine the amount of time that you would save by going out of your way to do it. Saving time means also saving carbon because you wouldn't use your car to go out. So this is where also they're trying to mobilize that people don't travel much, everything is available in the same block. So this is one way of doing it. So that comes to why do we do what we do as Green Towers? So we'll step up into Green Towers, so I'll show you what we do. So these were some of the towers that we were involved in as engineers and architects, as teams. So one of the reasons when we were building towers was it was really competitive. That, oh my God, that tower is this, and towers are known for their architecture. But with great architecture comes great costs. That means not sustainable. So some of these are built in like Russia. So they had like enough money. Somebody was paying for a go build. We can't have that system here. Everything has to be sustainable. The market has to sustain that. So the way to go high, construction technology is always there. How do you build high? Now people are trying to move towards modular construction. So can we build a skyscraper as modules and then assemble it on site and go high so that we can lower the build cost? That means eventually the rent prices will be low. People can afford it. So these are some of the solutions. So when we did this tower, we twisted a tower. So when we twisted a tower, we figured out, oh my God, this looks really good. And then this is absolutely, because it's like 10 blocks standing and one twisted tower in the middle. Everybody talks about that twisted tower. It's like, oh, this is amazing. And then we said, what's the cost of twisting a tower? It was really, we thought it would be really expensive, but the engineers were so really good at what they did. They were absolutely fantastic. They came up with some amazing solutions. I'll show you. One of the solutions is the civil engineers here would understand it. They used columns. So columns is basically you have 8 columns on the outside which will twist towards the right, and 4 on the inside which will twist towards the left. So when wind hits the building, the torsion is 0. So you don't need that much of steel and concrete to go up. So that drastically cuts the build cost. So this is where they said, you know what? Twisted towers is the future. Let's make a product which is a twisted tower, can go up easily. We don't have to twist it that much. We have low construction costs. Let's get going. So we said, okay, let's do this. And then we also did this. This was in Baku. And Baku is, they've got earthquakes there. So whenever you have earthquakes, building a tower is really expensive because you need that much of concrete and steel to hold the tower still. So this is where this was really expensive when they did it. So we said, ta-da, we'll create a green tower. So what we did was, on the engineering side, we made sure every level's the same, and they just go on top of each other with a 6-degree twist. And we use the same way of doing it. And at 50 stories, when they started twisting, you look at it, it really looks absolutely fabulous. And then we said, you know what, twisting a tower looks good, people would love it, but and it's also sustainable, but will it be ready for the future? Will people take it? So we said we need to do something about it. And at that time, like we said, everybody wanted to go green. It has to look green. Can we fix green? Can we do it really well? So here in Darmstadt, the Passive House Institute was really active. But the Passive House guys knew how to build small buildings, but they were not skyscraper specialists. So they said, can you guys do skyscrapers. Can you guys figure out a way how to make a skyscraper into a passive house? So we said, okay, so they put their thinking hats on, and they put these green, they had forsythias, ivies, a few amount of plants that can cover the building from the outside. So what the plants do is actually, they not only reduce the heat island effect, they also add to the looks, but what happens in the summertime, they really bloom. So they actually block the sun coming in, and then puts shade on the building, so the building cools down, and in the winter time, they drop their leaves. So the building takes the whole sun energy in, and then indirectly heats up the building. So that's how passive house works. So this is how a skyscraper, which becomes a passive house, does it. Now it's not just that. It's proper thermodynamics in there. So you look at what is passive house really. So passive house is not living in a plastic. It's really you actually block the escape of heat. around the house, you actually control it as much as possible. And at the same time, there's something called the heat recovery ventilation systems that they use. So you're ventilated 24/7. And also you breathe more oxygen in a passive house than a normal structure. So your stress levels are lower. You get to enjoy greater lifestyles. And this is why most of the structures now, even in Germany, they said all public buildings has to be a passive house. So even before you put your solar panels, even before you do anything from the outside, you need to know how the structure is from the inside. Can it be passive? Can we use our natural surroundings for our own inhabitation? And this is how these structures came in. And these guys, when they started off, I think 20 years ago, they were just researching, but now they're far ahead advanced than anybody else, and they can do some of the stuff these guys can do are really good. And that is why we said passive house is the future. This is where this technology is for sustaining cities. This is how cities should be built on. And the same way how we do it here in other countries, like in Dubai, in China, stuff like, we can also do the other way around, where we repel the heat and we cool the building down. So it's not just in cold countries that you can use it in any climatic conditions as well. So that's a bit about us. And then all I would say is Green Towers, as a company, we would like to play a small role in changing the future of real estate and tall buildings. So thank you all for your attention, and please do join us in our journey in changing the world to making it more greener.
Alright, coming back on stage, thank you so much. We just have a short panel discussion where we take all your questions into consideration. Please join us, Zachi. Do we need chairs or do we just do it standing?
What do you guys prefer?
It's healthier to stand, so
yeah.
Just come close by. So that was pretty interesting to see the whole journey, starting from construction and ending up with the whole building on the screen here. So my first question would be, so looking back into the construction world, what do you think are the major drivers of changing that? So what do you see coming up in the next years? You want to start, Zachi, or that?
Maybe I'll start. So
yeah.
I think, again, coming from a very different discipline, construction, as I learned, is not an industry. And because every building needs to look different, because we want a diverse environment, the solution to that is to making every building different in every way. So we're not looking at anything resembling industry or product, but we're looking at one-ups, and these one-ups are not optimized, and these one-ups are very, very expensive to build, also very expensive to maintain, and this is going to have to change. And buildings will, and we believe that buildings can have similar and shared components, if you will, and still be very diverse and very different in giving us this kind of an urban experience.
I think if we look at that, so if construction is happening, you were given an example of the twisted towers. So what are your challenges when you start a new building? What are the construction challenges you're facing, not just from the construction itself, but also from the environment around it, probably politics, governmental issues?
Of course, we've got the planners and the planners and the architects have to come together. And then comes the engineering part. So obviously we do face challenges with regulations. And also it comes down to, in regards to, now especially with Brexit and things like that, what's going on in the UK, you will have a big hit on labour. You've got a big hit on manufacturing. Where will these where are they going to build all these, where all the Italian marbles, how's it going to come in? Are they going to pay more duties on that? Will housing be more expensive? So these are the challenges that I see in the near 5 years coming up.
Zachi, you were showing some examples of construction projects, real estate projects where NGOs and the community came together to create something new out of an old building infrastructure. So the first thing I was thinking about when I saw this example is inclusiveness of cities. So we always have to debate on city centers are really expensive, it's just for the elite. These examples are probably the opposite of that. So what do you think, how important is inclusiveness of a city and to also combine the social aspects and integrating people into the city that probably are right now not capable of living within the city structure. So it's not so much about the technology there, but from a social dynamics perspective.
Yeah, so you see that kind of projects in New York, for instance. So you got in Manhattan these affordable housing projects. It's not that popular in Tel Aviv or in Israel, not at all. But what I wanted to say before about just what would be the drive, when speaking of the predictions for population in Israel, right now there are about 9 million people, something like that. The prediction for 20 years is about at least doubled. And the thing is so simple. You won't be able to supply the demand for housing if you're going to continue in the same way. So that won't happen. So there's no other choice. That's the only way. You have to spend on technology and find new ways for building these great buildings, but still working on the same old construction ways. In some cases, like hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago. It's the same, and that has to be changed.
Alex, so you were talking a little bit about the city of Frankfurt, so we probably can all relate in some way to Frankfurt. But Zachi was just saying, what do you think, how will Frankfurt look like in 10 years? So will we still be building it the old way, or is there a paradigm shift happening now?
We've seen Frankfurt changing, and Frankfurt housing market's taken a bull market tip. But we've seen that happen in London, and then in London it went so high that any apartment you buy costs you £1.5 million to buy. And then you realize a normal Londoner's wage is only £60,000 a year. So that guy technically, numbers-wise, doesn't match. He can never afford something. So then what happened was everybody ran into the rental market. So everybody started building these schemes called private rental schemes. So you build these big housing associations, it goes rental market, and then everybody moves into this rental scheme, and these co-living schemes pick up. And we've seen that happening recently. There's talks in Frankfurt, and there are some schemes even being planned in Frankfurt to do that. And the developers love it because what they do is you build basically small hotel rooms in building blocks with multiple amenities, and then you could sell more. So people live in, and then the councils used to love it because the occupancy levels are high, people are renting, it looks good. But then there was another challenge that these guys didn't foresee in London. So that probably the Frankfurt guys don't know it yet. There was a lot of churn in people. Like people moved in, like I moved in there for a week. Oh, after a week I'm moving somewhere else. So these guys had to go to the registration authority to register themselves. So those guys as a desk, they went crazy. They're like, somebody lived there 3 weeks ago. Now there's a new tenant. Now there's a new tenant. This is too much work. We don't have the infrastructure to support this type of fast-paced lifestyle. And this is what I feel that is changing. It's also becoming affordable, but it has its own challenges coming through as well.
Yeah. And then we probably see a lot of technology in the background making this possible from a process perspective.
Yes.
To exactly fix these things.
So PropTech is working really hard, and the PropTech guys are really on it. So especially blockchain will revolutionize how property is traded or sold or rented as well. These smart contracts are coming in. And very soon somebody who owns a house will be able to list his house to get cash out. Because one of the biggest problems with real estate as an asset is the liquidity. So now we have solutions where real estate can be commercially traded. Even globally they're talking about it. So one day you would just have to say, you know what, I have a house, can I borrow 25,000 straight away tomorrow morning? Like now if you want to do it, you would have to go to a bank, he will value the property, it will take time. But very soon in the future you'll be able to do it very quick. So this is where these changes will also affect the industry as well.
So before we start taking questions from the audience, just from each of you, what is your favorite PropTech at the moment? So what's the technology that excites you most, what you're seeing coming next? Is there any favorite that you're having? Whoever wants to start?
I think for my side on the industry that I'm in, there's a company in Amsterdam called Edge Technologies. They're doing some amazing stuff, and they won a couple of awards as well, but they're more on making everything green. So that's one of the best PropTechs that I've seen in the last 2-3 years that came up.
And for you?
I've seen a couple of startups in the design space. I don't recall the names, but again, streamlining design and optimizing usage of properties in a very efficient and sophisticated manner. So,
one of the startups that I mentioned in
thank you for your extremely interesting presentation. What you see is there's always the new craze. The craze, of course, then being that it must be sustainable, that it must be smart, that it must be green. Thank you for your word on inclusiveness, because I think that that is going to be more or less the newest thing that needs to be added to the concept. That is, it is nice to have a building with your salon and your gym or whatever, but the whole point is in cities is how are we still going to meet each other? It might be nice that you have time left, but what for? Isn't it in order to meet? And if you have high-rise buildings, if you have so dense cities, ever bigger cities, how do you create the space that more or less forces, in a way, people to meet each other and to be seen?
So PropTechs have been doing this really well. So now how you have apps for events and things like that, they make the whole building into an app. So you pretty much know your neighbor through the app. And then one way is obviously when you have communities walking by each other, cities are pushing people to get rid of their cars and to walk more. So when you walk more, you see more people, you would end up saying hello. If you're in England, of course, they will just say hello just for anything. So that basically happens. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is the tech way, that they're trying to make sure that people can engage more. And then buildings have been built with a lot more amenities to meet your neighbors. So you would have, so like how they have, like WeWork, great example. You have a building with a bunch of offices, but they make sure that they do an event every day, so at least all the offices come down and network together and get to know each other better. It's the same way that communities also will thrive in the future, is what we're doing.
Just one thing about that, but the UK is the first country to have a minister for loneliness, which means that not everybody is able to meet each other on the street or during events, and you have to be really active in trying to build communities.
It's great because they're the first country to realize that loneliness is a problem. The other countries haven't realized that yet. So UK on the other side figured out, hold on a minute, there is this thing called loneliness that's coming up, which is really bad, and it's true. People in their 30s and 40s are living alone and single, and they're figuring out that, oh my God, my relationship hasn't worked out, I've got this job which is super stressful that I've got to be there in that office for 12 hours a day, I come home, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't have any friends. So this is what they're trying to address by creating these co-living structures. So which is other cities are also adopting to that, is what I would say.
I want to make a comment on where tall buildings come into play there. So tall buildings started as regular buildings inside a grid serving a single purpose, and then they started growing. At some point, they become a city within a city, and some tall buildings are being designed as again a full ecosystem that allows you for meeting points, allows for multiple uses. So it's not just an office block which is deserted at night with people coming in at a certain very short time period, and then coming out at the same time period, maybe going to lunch in the middle. So you see things like schools that were historically separate buildings. So a school can be a part of a large building with its own entrance maybe, and with its own sky lobby, and with ways to connect it to the rest of the building. So, and this, as these buildings grow, it's going to be more of an issue. By the way, one issue here regarding regulation is treating the infrastructure in the building, because when you build a new street, then the city pays for the street, the city maintains it in most parts, and when you build a vertical street that includes all of these things, someone maybe has to pay for it, and it's much cheaper. An elevator is cheaper than and more sustainable, more efficient than a road. But still, because it's a public property, private property, it means that the building as a whole is much more costly for its tenants, but not necessarily for the whole ecosystem for the city.
Yeah, for the tenants as well, and this is why these buildings are being built more to be sustainability as a whole is not just money, not just energy, it's also people. People play a very important role in that, and that is why they're changing. Societies change, so with that also the way we build things also have to change, and that's what we want to say.
I must admit that I'm quite skeptic about these solutions, their ability to really connecting people, either technology or the technology of doing the
buildings together with landlords and also for other services in the whole building. So this is where you know your neighbor, you know who your landlord is, you know who the next landlord is, things like that. So this is also available on a digital platform. So
thank you for the statements. We have 2 more questions. First from you. Yeah.
So would you say that there will be also something like a community manager, like it is in co-working spaces?
yes, there's already community managers for these co-living spaces.
Yeah,
So like co-working, you have co-living too.
Just like in neighborhoods, you have.
So you have a concierge, and then you'll have a physical person, and then you also have a smart concierge on your phone. Now, lifestyles change. People are doing Amazon deliveries a lot more. They spoke about having drones deliver your stuff on top, and then people want to have their laundry services on there. People are ordering a lot of takeaways these days. So lifestyles change. Nobody wants to leave their house, and Netflix has come in, things like that. So of course, having a smart concierge helps, and that's where we're moving in.
Please.
I'm an architectural technologist, so I'm in the building industry. We're talking about buildings being sustainable, the high tech, that's where it's going. We're happy to up the landmark. The thing we all need, I'm from the construction, all we need to think about, is it, yes, it's sustainable, but is it affordable?
Yeah.
One of the big problems, the UK is not alone, it's in major cities,
Every
there's
city
a
is.
problem with housing. Not just the supply, but affordable housing.
Yeah.
Houses that people can't afford. So we're talking about this design, the cities are going to get smarter, we can't stop it. But we've also got to be very mindful, building with these wonderful smart towers, but who's going to be able to buy them?
Yeah.
If you've got the people on the lower incomes, it's happened in London, they built a high tower, but the community around that tower has effectively died.
Yeah.
So it needs, we can't stop the towers going up, the technology, it's got to go that way. But we also need to be very, very mindful that who's going to be able to afford to live by, or is going to exclude parts of the community. I mean, some of your projects, you reuse buildings for the community, low cost housing. Yes, that's included. Not picking on the tower. I'm in the technology side, but we're building these super high towers. But it's only going to be strict to the people, the high incomes, where the other people, the lower incomes, where do they live and how do they live?
There's 2 ways of it. Now, there's a policy in London that they do. It's a similar policy that they also do in Frankfurt. There's 2 ways of it. One, in London, you have a criteria called affordable housing. So if you're building 100 units, you need to build 30%. Sometimes it goes up to 50%, depending on how lucrative the project is.
Just if I could interrupt that, that's something happened similar in London. A lot of the big developments, they have a percentage, 5%, 10% must be social housing. But what has happened in the past is the developer, not picking on any developer in particular, but what has happened is they can't sell them, or in fact they don't want to sell them because it's social housing, there's this stigma. And what has happened, they say, well, we can't sell them, so they then go back to the council, these empty properties, so they get converted to executive flats. And the social housing is taken away. So, as I say, it's not looking for a solution or anything like
that's what I'm saying. There's 2 ways of doing it. One is a regulation. The regulators play a very strong role in it. And then comes the land value. Now, if I'm building something here, even if my build cost is 3,000 or 4,000 euros a square meter, my land will cost me 6,000 to 7,000 euros a square meter. Now I add that up and I put my risk on top. I cannot sell an apartment less than 10,000 euros a square meter in Frankfurt City. So that by default is the per square meter push that we get. And then comes the challenge in regards to, so this happened in London, so they said we'll just do build to rent model. Build to rent model is, I know the average wage of Frankfurt, the sweet spot of Frankfurt is if you have an apartment which is smart, offers cool stuff, you give 30 square meter spaces, you know people can afford 800 to 1,000 euros a month rent. So you can build a block of that and people can live there and enjoy the amenities. That's one way. And then there's a scheme called shared ownership, where in the UK they pushed for it, and it worked for a bit and then it didn't work again, because every time a government says, okay, we're going to put X amount of billions into a fund, And that means the government will own 50% of your apartment, and then you have to come up with 50% of the cost. And then you get kind of like a loan without interest, and then you go paying for that. That's one way of doing it. But those schemes ended up becoming, again, in their own schemes, private landlords got in there. So it's always about, can we address it from a social perspective, or can we address it from another perspective? One way or the other, buildings will be built. Why don't build it green? That's all we're saying. And then if affordably comes in, you have co-living, you have rental options, you have other options. That's the only thing I can say. And then you have these regulators saying affordable housing, social housing has to come in, and developers will have to do it.
There have been some studies done with communities. You have to have a mix. You can't all have people on higher. For a community work, you've got to have a mix of people from all scales, all walks of life to make a community work. So with these super high-tech buildings, we've all got to be careful. Wherever part of the construction process we're we've got to be mindful it's still accessible to those of the lower incomes. Otherwise, we're just magnifying the problem with the lack of housing.
As an architect, you would know there's Chicago did it, and you compare Chicago and New York. There's something called Mies van der Rohe is a great architect for that reason. What you do is, in Frankfurt, we can compare with the UBS Tower and the Deutsche Bank Tower. If you pull the building's glass line on the ground, you kick people out in the street. But if you pull the glass line up and you have a bit of retail concept at the bottom and also a rooftop concept, you invite the public in, and that makes the building more lively. It's simple architecture, you could do that too. You want to
I think that these price hikes, first of all, they're driven by demand, and the fact that when you build massive buildings, you see these changes because suddenly these massive buildings are being occupied. But if you look at deals in old buildings, even low quality buildings in the same area, you're not seeing, in most cities, you're not seeing prices lower. So tall buildings, skyscrapers are not the problem. I think the only way to address this demand problem is to increase density. Obviously, as you go high, as my colleague said, at some point it becomes very expensive to build. Again, we've seen some technologies that allow you to build a 400-meter building at the same cost per meter as a 100-meter building, which is maybe a game changer. So one thing is, I think, building more. The other thing where regulation comes in is the mix of properties, because sometimes, obviously, some people are ready to pay any price for very large properties, very lucrative properties. So instead of building 10 apartments, you build just one. So that's an issue, and probably regulation could come in and change that.
Overseas buyers, I have to cut you here because otherwise this discussion is not going to end on time.
No problem.
Because I already saw that our team is preparing the food, and we don't want to. We want to live a sustainable lifestyle, so we don't want to waste food as well, right? So we take all the final questions, only if it's a quick one. Do it quickly.
Okay. I mean, you were saying these buildings going high was somehow driven by sustainability or population density, and actually, I always have been driven by ego. I mean, to be the biggest skyscraper, wherever. Is it actually sustainable to build high, or is there a point where you say actually it could be a third of the height, and if we built more a third of the height instead of as high as we possibly could, this would be more sustainable than building everything as high as we can?
There is a sweet spot in height. But then comes the cities try to showcase buildings as a landmark. And this is where we have buildings like the Burj Khalifa. Just going to show up that we are the most wealthiest city in the world. We've got the Shard showing up. In Frankfurt, we have a site which is 365-meter approved. Donald Trump wanted to build a tower, and then he didn't build it. And then he went off. And then this is 2008. So there is a sweet spot for height, for sure, because it's also the factor of the build cost. But on the other side, when people want to show that they really want to go high, they also do it. That's the answer to the question.
That was short and sweet. Do you want to add on this, or?
Yeah, Morgan, when they built their building, I don't remember the year, but it was beginning of the previous century. They actually did a low-rise because they wanted to show that they can afford, to build a low-rise in such an expensive area. So ego plays multiple.
Ego can even play in an underground room. So height is just the thing to show it off.
So I think we have enough food prepared to eat and enough food for for the discussion and the networking. Please feel free to stay as long as you like. The fridge is open for everybody here, so just take what you want. Have some food. Thanks for the whole GTEC team for making this event happening. Thanks again for Union Investment, and thanks to our fabulous speakers. 2 flying in from Israel and 1 just walking over from Frankfurt. Thank you guys so much. We have a bottle of Just one final information for the housekeeping. So if you leave the building, you can't get back in. So you have to either call us or stay inside here. So if you need some fresh air, please use the backyard, which is not outside of the building, but if you leave the elevator, just turn right and you can go into the back. Okay? Have a lovely evening. Thanks for being with us. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Good one. Thank you so much.
Läuft noch was Besonderes?
Yeah, so the engine starting was in slowly setting out. So really green towers are product for the problem. Start building up now. Take a license. That's